Question. In the UK, Parliament is debating whether to legalise assisted dying. The law would only be eligible to terminally ill adults who have less than 6 months to live. You and the Masters have previously spoken against suicide as it limits the opportunity to heal one's psychology, which I tend to agree with. However, in this specific case, my gut feeling is in favor of the law, provided the strict conditions and safeguards are in place. The main argument in favor is to prevent intense physical or psychological suffering in people's last months, allowing them to die with dignity. In these terminally ill cases, is psychological healing even likely? If not, is assisted dying a legitimate form of dying in God's eyes? Could you kindly provide a higher perspective on this issue? Well, let's look at it from the Ascended Master perspective. The Ascended Master's main concern is people's growth. And growth happens by resolving psychology. So really what you could say is a terminal illness an opportunity to learn something about your psychology so that you could improve conditions for yourself for your next lifetime? So let's say a person has been told you have 6 months left to live. In the ideal scenario, the person would say, okay, now I know, right? Instead of thinking, oh, I'm never going to die, or I have years and years, I can just continue living my life. Now I know my life is going to end in 6 months. What kind of an opportunity is this for me? And the person could then say, okay, it is an opportunity to look at myself, look at my psychology, make as much psychological progress as possible. And if society was in an ideal state, then society would say, if you are interested in resolving your psychology, we will offer you as much help as we possibly can in these last 6 months. In other words, we will assign you psychologists for free that can work with you. Right now, many societies would probably look at it and say, well, that's a waste of resources. This person is going to die anyway, because they don't consider reincarnation, right? So you can see, in an ideal scenario, there would be a very different consideration about assisted dying, because you would say, well, why should the person even want to die until it has learned as much as it could? Now, of course, there are some clearly limitations to this, because what if the person is in constant pain? What if the person is almost unconscious, either because of painkillers or because of other things? So the person isn't able to really do anything with its psychology. That's fine, and that is a different consideration. And so, you know, as we move higher and higher in consciousness on Earth, it's my clear vision that more and more things will be allowed for people's own decision, instead of society deciding for them that this is not allowed. And so I think that in the long run, the more aware societies will allow assisted dying. Just a matter of what process individual countries have to go through. But I also think in a little bit longer run, more and more societies will begin to focus on the psychological healing process. So naturally you could say, if a person isn't willing to heal their psychology and just wants to get out of here, should they be allowed to do that? And I think yes, probably. But I would say it would be better if the person was offered something to make use of that last 6 months from society, instead of just saying, oh, well, here's the needle. So, but another consideration you will have to make here is that we are not in an ideal situation. Most societies don't believe in reincarnation. They aren't focused on psychological healing. So this means there's another consideration that could come into it. And I know the person is saying that the Ascended Masters speak out against suicide, and for good reason, because it limits your future lifetimes. But what I'm saying is that Ascended Masters have also said that if you are in physical pain, it is okay to use painkillers, especially for example, an operation or something like that, anesthesia, because the physical pain can also create scars in the soul, in the four lower body, especially in the emotional body, that can carry over to the next lifetime and therefore limit you. So you could say the same thing here. I mean, if a person is in very difficult conditions with illness or physical pain, it can be better in the long run for the soul's evolution that it goes out of embodiment instead of experiencing that last pain. And you also have to take into consideration here that advances in modern medicine has made it possible to keep the body alive much longer than it was decades ago, for example. So we can now see that where a person might have died fairly quickly of a disease 20 years ago, now we can keep that person alive for several months. And again, societies are in this position where we are focused on extending life at all cost and as long as possible, because we don't have the right to play God. And this is also not a long-term tenable position, because we are now technologically able to extend life beyond what would have been a natural lifespan of that person. So you see what I'm trying to say here is I don't have a clear-cut answer, but there are many different considerations that come into play. And I actually think that what is happening in the times we are living in is that we are being forced to deal with some of these very difficult questions that previous generations didn't have to deal with. And the reason for this is actually that the collective consciousness has been raised. Whereas in the past you just suppressed these questions or ignored them. Now we have to wrestle with them in order to grow further. And it's actually a positive sign, even though some will see it as a negative. So what I'm saying basically is that even the Ascended Masters, I don't think they have a clearly defined answer. This is what should happen. This is what society should do. What they really want is for societies to wrestle with the questions, and as a result of that, they grow. The collective consciousness is raised. People take more responsibility for deciding these very complicated questions and really evaluating them from different perspectives. Because what you see in many cases still, I mean, you take a typical example of this is the abortion issue in the United States, where the abortion issue has been polarized by these two extremes. You're either pro-life or pro-choice. There's nothing in between. But of course there's something in between, which is, for example, women's situation in society. Are women seen as sexual objects, so they are more likely to become pregnant at a young age? You don't have social benefits, you don't have a welfare system in the United States, so how is a 17-year-old girl who gets pregnant because she was forced to have sex with a classmate, how is she going to take care of a child in the United States? Whereas in some other countries there is more of a social welfare system, and you see that abortion isn't such an issue, and there aren't actually as many abortions. So you see what I'm saying? It's again not a black and white issue. It's a matter of wrestling with these questions, saying, are there things we haven't considered? When you're talking about life and death questions, can we really decide these questions based on this black and white, yes, this is the right solution, no, this is the wrong solution? Or do we have to step back and consider many more aspects of the question, like I've tried to outline here about assisted dying, that you can look at it from various angles and really say, what is best for the soul and, in a sense, what is best for society.